It's
Okay,
recording to the cloud now.
Okay, now it's recording. Okay,
Okay.
so welcome everybody, and let's get started then with this session. This is the session on population PK reporting. And we're very, very excited because we've got two APT fellows that's gonna be joining Noor in order to run the entire session. My understanding, Noor, is that you're gonna take around 15 to 30 minutes, right, Noor? And then you're also gonna challenge your colleagues because you're gonna give them quizzes.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So that's all ready. So Noor will start, and then we'll hand over to Veshni and Rohan. Hopefully Veshni will be able to be with us throughout, but as you probably know, Veshni is a medical doctor and has got a patient that she might need to go off in a hurry to go and see. With that, let me. Who wants to take over? Veshni, you want to describe what's going to happen?
Absolutely. Thanks. Thanks, Colin, and hi all. This is really great. Rohan and I are very excited to be on this end of the APT fellowship. So I'm sure that it's been an amazing experience for you guys thus far, and I'm sure the rest of your journey is going to be just as amazing. So Rohan and I are going to follow on from Noor's presentation. And Noor, can I please ask that maybe we do the quiz at the end after mine and Rohan's presentation? So we do your summary, then Rohan and myself will give you some of our experiences during the program when it came to reporting and things that we think that you may benefit from as well. And thereafter, we can go into the quiz, which will then start a whole Q&A. So if that's okay, we'll take it like so.
Okay, that's okay for me.
Perfect. So Noor, it's over to you.
Okay, so I will share my screen first of all. So hi everyone, as you know, today it's my turn to make the summary of the lesson. Actually, it's the Module 9 lesson, which is about reporting population PK analysis. Do you see my screen?
Correct, we do.
Yeah. So I based my presentation.
Noor, you can do one more thing. Could you click that muscular button? Yes, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So I based my presentation on the learning objectives of the lesson, which are describe the components of modeling reports, first of all, then the review regulatory requirements for pharmacometrics reports, and finally, define the importance of and explore methods for quality checks of modeling reports. So for each objective or for each recording, we had important points to take home. Let's start with the first one. The first recording was about describe the compounds of modeling reports. We were supposed to learn the purpose of a population PK report, the questions a report should answer, and the report structure, and the key figures and tables to be included. For the first point, so we learned that the purpose of a population PK report was communication of the analysis, its results and conclusions that can be drawn from them. And we also learned that there are two uses of the report. The first one, the internal use, and the external, especially regulatory use for evaluation. And one important thing is to make attention to the audience you are talking to, that you can have technical readers. These are expert people. They can be reviewers or technical experts with a real background, a pharmacometrician background. However, it can be non-technical readers without specific expertise in pharmacometrics. The most important thing is you have to make a well-written report to be impactful, certainly. So the second point was the recording or the presentation summarizes the questions a report should answer. Here we have the six most important questions. First of all, why was the analysis done? We know it's to obtain alignment of objectives with key stakeholders. Objectives should be spelled out in the analysis plan and report, certainly. The second question is what information was used. We especially talk about the data source here. How was it done? And here we are on the description of modeling approach and relevant technical details. And what were the findings and why do they matter? So here you should highlight main findings in your report, relate results to initial analysis objectives, and place results in the overall context of prior knowledge about the compound and the intended patient population. Then another question is the model good enough? So I think until now we learned a lot of approaches to evaluate the model, and here we have to demonstrate that the model describes that data adequately, and we know how to do it. And what this final question: what are the key assumptions of or limitation of analysis interpretation? And here we are in the discussion section, I think. So you had to put the awareness of analysis strengths and weaknesses that will allow for informed decisions to be made, and the rationale for modeling assumptions and choices should be described so the reader can assess whether conclusions. Then another important section of the presentation was the report structure, which is composed from 10 sections. The synopsis, the introduction, objectives, data, methods, results, discussion, conclusion, reference, and appendices. I didn't detail them because we had already seen this in the lesson 3, and the recording is really detailing all the sections and what should you put in the report for each one. So some notes from this recording. The topic of this presentation is population PK reporting, certainly, but the guiding principles presented here are applicable for all pharmacometric reports, including PK/PD and simulation reports. Another thing, and I think this note was in the EMA guidance, which is that it's true that NONMEM, as most frequently used NLM software, is often used as example, but the same principles apply if other softwares are used, like such as Monolix and other softwares using a nonlinear mixed effect. For now, let's switch to the second record or the second presentation, which was about the review regulatory requirements for pharmacometrics reports. You know, it's very important, this regulatory aspect. So the guidance that relate to pharmacometric reports was from FDA and EMA, and this they also talked about submission of pharmacometrics output to FDA. So I know that at this stage of the APT program, we all know we are all able to recognize these two guidance. So the first one, the FDA one, the new population pharmacokinetics guidance, which is really a general guidance for pharmacokinetics or population pharmacokinetics, and there is a section about reporting. However, the EMA guidance, it's all about the reporting the results of a population pharmacokinetic analysis. So the first one is the newest one from 2022, and the AMA one is from since 2007. So I was very happy to discover those links. Actually, this is the FDA website on submitting data, which is very important. But this guidance snapshots and podcasts, if you click this link, you have access to this guidance snapshots, and it covers almost all the aspects of pharmacometrics, clinical pharmacology, and it's very interesting to see. So I recommend you to 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 see those links. Then I will pass to the third and final objective. So which defend the importance of and explore methods for quality checks of modeling reports. So we have some question to answer in this recording. So who does which type of QC, technical QC versus content QC, the purpose of the QC, and what needs to be checked, and finally the difference between QC and QA. So here I summarized the answer for the first and second question in the table. So here you have the technical QC, which is generally a medical writer, and it's all about the layout, the grammar, the consistent formatting, tables of content, list of tables and figures, and their consecutive numbers, and all that is related to the format of the report. However, the content QC, as its name mentioned, it's performed by a modeler, and he has to make sure that the title reflects contents, internal consistency, reported results match analysis results. Table and figures should have a reference to the correct source documents. So he has to make the content check, report the content check, the interpretation of the results. So that explains that how why it should be made by a modeler and a pharmacometrician expert. So the purpose of QC is the second point is the purpose of QC. So a QC should ensure that the report is technically accurate and in appearance and content, the scientific rationale is sound, and that the report is complete with regard to the analysis plan and study plan. And here all the recordings and presentations insist on the importance of the analysis plan, on modeling simulation analysis plan, as a first step and important step to have a good quality report at the end. And then here we have the difference between QC and QA. So the quality control or quality check and quality assurance comparison chart. The second one, the quality assurance, is about it's a managing tool. However, the quality control is a corrective tool. The quality assurance is a process-oriented, proactive strategy, prevention of defects, everyone's responsibility, and it's performed in parallel with the project. However, the quality control is product-oriented, reactive strategy. It's a reactive strategy, and it enables detection of defects and permits testing teams' responsibility, and it's performed after the final product is ready. So that's all for me, and it's for you, Venki and Rohan.
Great. Thank you so much, Noor. So that was an amazing summary of quite an intense content for the week, but extremely valuable. We tend to underestimate this aspect of it, but this is the total end result, right, of the entire modeling process. You need to be able to produce a good report at the end of it. So at this point, before we move any further, are there any burning questions from the fellows or maybe thoughts you want to share? I'm also watching the chat space and I don't see any comments or questions. Is there any at this point? Or I think everyone's just going to keep their comments for the Q&A section. All right,
No,
you're welcome to.
there's a hand up.
Okay, great. Safa?
Yeah, hello everyone. Good to see you, Rohan and Vishni. So I just I felt like I was really it was really nice and into the point and describing every step. I think it's really good. Like I don't know. I felt like the report. It's maybe explaining more actually the analysis plan. Like if it's like I don't know. That was my thought. It's really giving you into details what you want to report, and actually that's what we need to know. Like we need to know like that what we will be asked for, so we will be prepared while we are in the process. So we will be performing the QA, like quality assurance, like in the during the process we will take care of these points and consider it while performing actually our methods and while reporting as well. So it's not only like the how to report it or put it in the final format. I think it's more into how it's integrated into the process. And I have a question. So it was in the first presentation, and it was there was a question about the meaning of covariates with effect size less than 20%. I didn't get that the meaning of that. Thank you.
Thanks, Safa. No, you want to try? So maybe
I'm
you
trying to
want to.
find it in the presentation. You want me to share the presentation? Maybe you can find the points that Safa is talking about.
Yeah, you're welcome to pop the slide up again.
Which detail are you talking about, Safa? Is it in the
It's let me check. It was in one of the slides.
risk-based model? No. It's about covariates?
Yeah.
And your question about 20%, something like that?
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question, please, Safa?
So it was a question raised there actually in during the presentation,
The record.
during the recording. Yeah.
Okay, do you know in what context it was asked? So
It was
during
about
the yeah.
it was about the covariate model building, I believe.
About selecting the covariates, maybe?
Okay, maybe I'll double check. Yeah, I will check the presentation
Yeah,
and
if you can
let
put
you
it
know
in the
the
chat.
number of the slide. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's
Sure.
do that
And maybe
later
you can,
then.
correct, and you can also just plunk it in the chat and we could always look at it again and then respond to you, even if it's outside of this meeting. Probably get a bit more context in terms of the recording itself. So Innocent has made an extremely valuable point in the chat that no matter how high quality your study may be, if the report is poorly written, the study will be judged as poor quality. And that's extremely true. I couldn't agree more. So don't ever underestimate the reporting process. Okay, so if there's no other further questions or comments, maybe we'll move on to the second presentation, and then we're gonna loop back to Noor with the quiz and then the open discussions. So you would have noticed that within the model platform, the content that was shared is largely around regulatory and what is required to report your study at a regulatory level. There was also some content around scientific writing, which is extremely important because as APT fellows, you may not go through the whole regulatory process of reporting during this fellowship. Some of you might encounter it later, and this is setting the foundation. But what you would be doing is reporting your studies. And there's different ways of reporting that, not only at a regulatory level, but being able to relay this information and report it to a community, whether it is a community of pharmacometricians or modelers, for instance, at a conference, or whether that could be in writing up your manuscript and submitting it to a relevant journal. So these are experiences that Rowan and I had during our program, and we thought it would be good to share with you something else, so a different aspect of reporting, and that is reporting in terms of a conference, reporting in terms of developing your manuscript at the end for journal submission, and so you get a bit more of a holistic picture around reporting, so regulatory plus reporting on an academic level. So Rohan, I'm going to hand over to you.
Awesome. Can you hear me?
Yes, loud and
Testing.
clear.
Yes. So obviously, this is a super important topic, and we've heard basically the crux from Nora already. And the crux is reporting is a continuous process, right? That you have to think about the whole time. And at least for me, when I came into it, I saw it as the boring part. But to Innocent's point, if it's not done well, then, doesn't matter how good your work is. And I actually saw something in another context today where they were contrasting doing actual work with your ability to describe your work, and where those two things overlap, you actually generate opportunities not only to improve yourself, but to let your work have a larger impact in the world as whole. Okay, so I'm going to start with two just fun ideas. Should be obvious. So the first one is a short video. Please work. Yes.
All right, sir. So my fellow here has told me all about your case. Okay. As you know, you have a possible neoplasm in the proximal duodenum, and what we'd like to do is...
I'm sorry, what?
Please, let me finish what I was saying.
I thought he said I just had a small growth in my intestine.
Yes, sir. Dr. Keller was just saying that. Now, we need to perform an esophagogastroduodenoscopy for biopsy, specialized staining, and analysis.
Excuse me, what?
That's the special camera procedure I was telling you about before.
Oh, okay. And will this be today?
It could be today, unless there's an emergency.
Why would I have an emergency?
Well, we can never predict complications of a procedure, but there is a possibility that your heart could stop and you could die.
I thought you said it was probably nothing.
Right, sir, but these are all very, very rare, I promise you. Dr. Keller, I think when you mentioned emergencies, he thought you meant that he could have an emergency. Anyway, you take a proton pump inhibitor, correct?
I do?
When in the day do you take it?
Take what?
He doesn't take a proton pump inhibitor? Your omeprazole, sir, the acid medication?
Oh, yeah, I take it.
BID?
What?
BID? Twice a day?
Oh, yeah, twice a day.
We'll see you after endoscopy. That's the camera procedure, by the way.
Now, Ben, I think we need to talk about how you interact with patients on rounds.
Oh?
You really should leave the talking to me when we're with the patient.
Oh, really?
When you keep chiming in after I try to explain things, I think it confuses the patient.
Yeah, he definitely seemed confused.
Exactly. He doesn't need you jumping in and changing the subject constantly.
Sure. Now, where to next?
So the obvious irony there, hopefully not lost. And then I've got another example from a field that I've got a passion for. So this little paragraph, I'm not going to read it out, but I'll read little excerpts from it. So, for instance, specific architecture utilizes multi-layer perceptron frameworks to optimize weights through backpropagation, leveraging stochastic gradient descent. Furthermore, hyperparameter space undergoes a Bayesian optimization process to ascertain certain global minima of the loss function landscape, thereby ensuring generalizability of the model across unseen datasets. So large chunk of text, jargon heavy, but what it really means in simple words, artificial intelligence, called a neural network, can predict outcomes. It learns from data by adjusting its parameters, and then it avoids learning around details. It chooses its setting to work well within new situations. So essentially, what is the crux here? Who are you talking to? And is it necessary to use the words that you've decided to use, so the jargon? So obviously, if you're speaking to a modeler, in our context, you use the appropriate jargon. If you're presenting at a conference and it's not a modeler, then you need to find ways to incorporate what you're saying into the understanding level of the person that you're talking to. Okay, so just a slight segue now, just to my APT project, so that you can have a little bit of background of what our objectives was in terms of reporting. So for my project and my APT fellow partner, Ida Kauma, we had a slightly different project than all the other fellows in our cohort, in the sense that we did not develop a model, but instead we developed a Shiny app that did PK simulations specifically for monoclonal antibodies. Now, again, I'm not going to go into all the details here, but essentially monoclonal antibodies are up and coming and a very important class of therapeutic. And then many of them exhibit a non-linear type of PK distribution. And many times when we're developing models for them, we're trying to collate data from different sources. And so for our project, in collaboration with GSK, Maxwell Sierra, we developed a Shiny app that could initially save time, financial resources, minimize programming errors, and facilitate model development in this space. So the methods we used, obviously we coded in Shiny. We used the Golem framework. The simulation we did with MRG Solve. And then for plots and the reports, we did general things in R, ggplot, things that you should be fully aware of by this stage. So just a little bit about what the app looked like. We had the option to choose between a TMDD and a QE approximation model. And the essential differences there were just the complexity at which you're modeling the protein complex that forms and deadheres. And then we could choose route of administration, obviously. We could also simulate either individual profiles or POP-PK profiles. And then there were various parameters that the researcher could input, and as well as the simulation parameters. And then the outputs were graphs of our simulations, as well as the data, as well as summaries of that. And I've been continued working with Maxwell on this app for the last 6, 7, 8 months, trying to make it a bit more complex, a bit more modular. I'm not going to go into the detail now, but if you want to ask about it or talk about it, feel free to contact me after. So we made the app, and now we have to report it in some way. So we were fortunate enough to be able to present it at Page last year. And what were our challenges in this context? Well, for me, it was the very first time that I was presenting something that was in a digital format and also in a usable format, in the sense that I wasn't simply reporting the outputs of intellectual work that I did, but it was also something that the audience could engage with in different ways. So this presented itself in different types of questions that I'd never got before, and it was mainly because of the audience range, right? And that determines the type of engagement you would have. So if it's a modeler, the questions would be about what types of modeling questions can be answered with this tool. If it was a clinician or say a regulatory person, it was more about, okay, where can I find this app and how can I use it? And if it was an R user or a Shiny app developer, it was technical questions on like, how did you solve this problem? Come take a look at my app, I solve it this way. And so a lot of new and different aspects to me about reporting my work was found within this context. And I think how we got through it as a important note, but maybe a little bit aside, is our team worked very well to our strengths. So I could rely on Ida to pick up the slack where my modeling skills weren't up to par at that stage yet, and she could rely on me for the coding part, which I had a much greater interest in than she did. And so a good strategy when reporting, say, a poster at page, for instance, is to try and anticipate the types of questions that you might have or might get, I mean. But it's also important to remain flexible within what you could possibly anticipate, right? You don't want to bog yourself down in like, I thought it was going to go this way, and then went a completely other way, and now I'm unable to handle the situation. And it ties into the last point, which is be realistic, meaning at every single presentation of a thing, whether it be a model that you're presenting. Oh, Ronald? Oh, was it accidental? Do you have a question? Okay. So in any context that you're presenting something, there is a central idea that you want to convey. And you need to keep a realistic bound on what that concept is. You can't explain everything in every setting. And then my last slide from my side is to just bring this all back again to the regulatory side of things. So the FDA actually does have a center for digital health excellence. It's called the Digital Health Center of Excellence. And it's mainly focused on medical devices. However, they now do have guidances on software, and it's heavily dependent on the context in which your software will be used. So is it a point of care device? Is it for teaching? Are you using it for, say, collating data? There are different use cases, and it falls under different paradigms for the FDA in terms of the types of approval you need. And then there's also, obviously, with the advent of AI, now this idea of software as a medical device, because we are building softwares that are smarter, they can make choices on their own, and even affect outputs in the real world. So just to bring it that, you know, there, depending on the work that you do, there might be a greater need for regulatory approval. And it comes back again to what is the question you're answering, sorry, and who is it going to impact? And does that impact mean any danger for patients or for data leaks or for malicious agents to use it? And that is why these regulatory processes are so needed. Vishni, I've given you control, and you can take us on. Are we fighting each other again?
Okay, can you hear me now? I couldn't find my controls. We were fighting with each other. Okay, so I'm gonna move back a bit. So my project during the APT program was related to trichuriasis, which is a public health burden, basically. It's an infection that is caused by parasitic worms, and it's quite a high burden within African countries where you would typically find tropical weather and where access to personal hygiene and there's also poor sanitation practices are not readily available. And in around 2002, the estimated number of persons affected with this parasitic infestation was about 1 billion. So clearly we had a very clinical question to answer. So in our study, we had to assess 2 treatment arms. So one using albendazole alone, which is a antiparasitic medication to treat this infestation, or we could assess, or we could give these patients albendazole plus ivermectin. And I'm sure from COVID, everyone knows what ivermectin is at this point. So the issue we were dealing with is that we had data from 2 different countries. One was Ivory Coast and the other was Pemba Island, Tanzania. And within the 2 countries, we saw difference in cure rates. And I'm not going to go into the detail, but from this, we developed objectives to try and solve a clinical question. So the first was to describe a population effect on the PK of albendazole. The second was to quantify potential drug-to-drug interactions between albendazole and ivermectin. And lastly, we wanted to explain difference in efficacies observed between the combination treatment or albendazole ivermectin treatment in Ivory Coast versus Pemba Island in Tanzania. And we wanted to accomplish this using the PK data we had. So that's just an overview of the project we had to deal with. Before I go any further, let's go back to what we're talking about, and that's the whole reporting process. So where do you start the report in the modeling process? And anyone can actually unmute and answer this. It's open to the fellows. Where do you think we would start formulating this report during the whole process? Anyone?
Do you mean by where, in which step? Like
Yes, in which step? In which step in your whole process? So by now, I think all of you guys might have had your data already. So where do you think in the whole process from acquiring your data to doing your final analysis, where would you actually start with your reporting process in terms of formulating a report?
think
I
we
see
can
Davies.
start from the beginning. Oh yeah, okay.
Oh, okay, go ahead, Safa. You want to complete your thought?
It is just like I was thinking, like maybe you can start having the start the process of the reporting maybe from the early beginning when you have the analysis plan and have your objectives, so you can start have like you can start formulate your report.
Mm-hmm. Great. Davies, your thoughts?
No, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you
Yes.
perfectly.
I think one, you start the moment you realize that modeling is the answer to your question.
That's a good way of putting it. Innocent?
Yeah, so it's like Safa. So usually for whatever I do, the analysis plan, that's part of the report. The introduction won't change in my final report. The methods will now be past tense in the final report. So even before I get the data, once I have a project and I start writing up the analysis plan, to me, I believe I've started the reporting.
Great. Thanks, guys. And I absolutely agree with you. So when you receive your data, you've already thought about, okay, what question am I answering, right? And at that point, you would start developing a data analysis plan. You would figure out how you're going to actually answer the clinical question, whether it is a clinical question or the modeling question that you set out to answer. And then from there, you'll go on, you'll work on the data, and of course, you would create or complete your report. But the report itself, that building process, and I absolutely agree with all of your viewpoints, the building the report happens longitudinally. So from the time of actually developing the clinical question or the question, you would actually start building your report. And I love what Innocent said, and it shows that the data analysis plan is extremely important. And this is just going to iterate or reiterate what Innocent mentioned. And this is our page 2023 poster. And within this poster, half of the poster, actually, the data came out from the data analysis plan. So here we were reporting our study already on academic level, and half of it actually we just pulled out of the data plan because your introduction doesn't change, like Innocent mentioned, your methodology doesn't change. The only thing you're adding is your results. So you've already started the whole reporting process. You're just building on it as you go along. So each step is adding a different element to your report. And do not underestimate this. And I think many of us underestimate it and say, oh, no, we'll do the reporting at the end. But that's not so. It's actually a continuous and a longitudinal process. And further building on, so after we've presented at page 2023, following that, the decision with the sponsors and the team was, okay, we're writing this manuscript, let's start. And what I've highlighted here is the manuscript, so just the introduction, methods, discussion, conclusion, and the references at the end. But what I want to show you, and this is not, you're not meant to read it or visualize it as such, but just to show you bits and pieces that actually came from other documents along the process. So the green bits is actually abstract and a bit of the methodology and so forth that came out from the page poster. And the yellow is still from the data analysis plan. And then you can see that there's actually very little that we've added afterwards. It's just added results, discussed the results, and then conclusion. But much of it actually came from existing documents. So here, reiterating that it is an ongoing process, it's longitudinal. Okay, so that was the first point we want to bring across. The second point, and quite a experience on my end, is the target audience. And I think our project iterated this very well because we had a very clinical question. Much of our group were clinicians. So coming back to Safa's question around clinically relevant covariates, it was something we actually spoke about intensively during the data analysis plan. Which covariates do we think is clinically relevant to add or to add in the model when we're doing the covariate model building stage? And whatever we thought was not clinically relevant, well, don't do it. If you want to test it out. But if it's not clinically relevant, why add it? So those were discussions we had. Other discussions was, how do we present the data? How do we put the table together? How do we present the final parameter estimates? And this was our table from page. So you can see under covariates, we have our betas. We checked population differences, so that's what you have there. We put in our omegas, we came into individual variability, etc., etc. And when it came to our final submission, that table changed a bit. And this was in relation to, first of all, what was our target audience? We know this was a very clinical question. We were targeting the clinicians. We went for a journal that was very clinical, so very clinically focused original research articles. And we then modified this table a bit. And we thought, okay, we're not going to add the residual variability estimates. And this was a joint discussion with all the clinicians. We changed, you could see, you don't see omegas and betas anymore. We wrote out between subject variability on volume, variability on clearance, et cetera. So we actually wrote out some of those terms that our target audience could understand better as opposed to modelers. So we had the first submission gone through to the clinical team or the clinical journal, and they came back and they thought, well, we think this paper better suits our sister journal, which was really into research and development and how the drug actually changes during this entire course of drug development. So then we get the second journal feedback. And here again, you instantly see that, okay, these are kind of, they want to put more of the modeling data that was initially removed because we thought our target audience was different. And some of the questions that came back from the reviewers were, okay, where's the unexplained residual variability? It's missing in the table. What about the stratified VPCs? Write in detail how the goodness of fit plots were assessed. And here, we took out a lot of detail, but a lot of what we put into the manuscript was also kind of assuming and not stating it explicitly. And when we got the feedback back, we actually they wanted us to state exactly what we did. Even if we thought that just stating the goodness of fit plots were good enough, it wasn't enough. So one of the other things were, could the authors indeed confirm that body weight was not a covariate in this adolescent population? So yes, we said we were going to assess it, but they just wanted it to explicitly be stated within the results section, et cetera. So from this feedback, you could see that when you report, the detail in which you report is extremely important, and especially on a regulatory level. At a regulatory level, there's that the person that's reading, on the other end knows or does not know, you would have to actually give quite a good detailed report and still keeping in the key decisions throughout your modeling process. And that is something extremely valuable that we've learned. And here again, coming back to who's your target audience, and what is the message you're trying to convey, and never assume that the person reading your report knows modeling or is a modeler or is not a modeler. You would just write to accommodate all aspects and be as detailed as possible. So the key points from this, what Rohan and I wanted to bring across, was that the report preparation actually starts with the development of the question you wish to answer. Be aware of your audience. Know relates to. So what are the key decisions? What are the conclusions? Keep the golden thread throughout. And what is the detail needed? So when you, at a regulatory level, you need to add the detail, the relevant detail. And if you had to go back to the EMA and the FDA, yes, they both have their key differences, but using them in conjunction would also work really well. And so that type of detail that's needed, give it to them. When it comes to academic writing or scientific writing for journal submissions, etc., you actually want to know what is the scope of the journal, who's your target audience, what do you want to relate to them, and then you decide on that detail that's needed. Don't underestimate a good analysis plan. And also a detailed report, don't assume people know, state it explicitly. And that's the end of our presentation. Are there any questions? Noor, while we getting the questions up and running, and I'm just going to look at the the chat a little bit more, you can put up the quiz or start setting your quiz. So there's a few things in the chat. Colin, you want to share your experience?
I think it's good. I mean, the first one was really resonated with me, but I think you got it from a couple of other people. But I think Timidosia was Amira was part of that, and you know she might be able to relate the experience with working like with someone like Andreas. So Andreas Krause was, you know, a very experienced statistician when I got in, but he had not done any nonlinear mixed effects modeling analyses. So we were teamed up together, me to learn how a statistician thinks, and for him to learn how a non-mem analysis actually gets done. And it was the first time that I experienced that idea that, you know, you are pulling out and you're writing your report as you're progressing the analyses.
Great. Thanks, Colin. Amira, do you want to share your experience there or add to anything Colin's?
No, I don't think there's anything more to add, but Mila has a question. So please, Mila, go ahead.
Thanks very much. Yeah, thanks, Vishnu, for your nice presentation. Yeah, so my question is not necessarily directed to you, but anyone in the call can still answer. Yeah, I'm particularly interested in the study that you did, where you're comparing the effect of the antiparasitic drug in Tanzania and should be West Africa. Yeah, so I've just been observing of late, like like how drugs, the rate at which drugs are recalled by several regulatory authorities in some of the African countries. So was your study like, were you administering the same brand, or it was just like different generics that you were looking at in two countries?
Yeah, that's an extremely important question. So it was the same brand in both the countries, and this was particularly a question that came up during our first APT face-to-face contact session, whether we were looking at effects, you know, related with the same drug, same brand in both countries, and it certainly was so.
So you didn't do any genetics, like any
No, so
genetics?
we didn't have genetic data. All we had was just the PK data, so just the concentration time profiles of parent and metabolite for albendazole. Later on, what we did find out, you know, from subsequent studies from the same group, is that the resistance profiles in the two groups were quite different in terms of the parasite itself, resistant strains of the parasite. So that could have played a role in the difference in cure rates we were seeing. Could be that we were just dealing with different strains of the parasite itself.
Thank you.
Great.
Rashni, can I add a couple of things on that? You know, that particular project, and I mean, yeah, again, others might want to comment as well, Samir, or that particular project got then done by two APT teams. So Veshni and her colleague Jacinta studied so ivermectin, and then the second group looked at another drug, or vice versa. And what was interesting here was that the difference in response was very clear. I think nobody responded in the one side, and a large proportion responded on the other side. And this was a data set that had been analyzed to death. You know, multiple PhD students, master students, etc., had worked on this. And then along we came and said, do you have a project? And they said, yeah, let's look at whether there's a PK difference. So they didn't really expect that there would be a PK difference. You know, you might find that this often happens, that the nice thing here is that at least there were drug concentrations measured. So, you know, in very often in phase 3 studies or big studies, they don't look at exposure and they don't measure exposure. So in this particular study, they had the exposure. So it gave Vaishni and the team to look at that. So clearly the drug got in, but somehow it didn't work.
Francis?
Yes, Vaishni, can you come?
I can hear you, but you're breaking up just a little. You want to try, and then I'm going to let you know.
Is it better now?
Better now.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, presentation. One of the things you clearly mentioned is how important it is to, you know, first know the audience that you're trying to communicate to. That influences a lot the way you write. Modeling wise, if you look at, for example, the output we get from Norway, there are quite a number of ways to present that. I've seen in the example that you gave, you're targeting a clinical audience based on your project, the project you did. But if you look at the table, I think it has the likes of IIV still on the scale, the same parameters that non-BEM outputs. There could be some guidance on maybe more general ways of, I would think if you're targeting a clinical audience, the way you said % coefficient of variation, perhaps you would look at the relative standard errors instead of give a range for the parameters. I don't know what is really the best way of presenting some of this data. You say you output, for example, the member IIV numerical quantity, or you would convert it into a form that makes yes, as a what is the best way to
Yeah. So Francis, I was losing you there a little, and I'm not sure if it was only me, but you wanted to know what was the best way of reporting the estimates in a table format,
yes.
Right?
Yeah,
That was it. Okay.
to me, if you say the IIV on clearance is 0.01 I'm not sure if a clinical audience would appreciate that.
Correct. No, you're absolutely right. I absolutely agree with you. And so I have firsthand experience of trying to speak to absolute clinicians about modeling. And up to this day, it's a task. It's quite a mission. When you talk to them, you need to make it very practical. So, you know, the way you really, if you're talking truly just to clinicians, you have to give them a case. You give them a case, and then you need to talk them through the PK of the drug, and then you need to tell them, okay, so this is the model, not even divulge or not even go into the specifics of, you know, what you did through the model building, but all they want to know is, what is the end result? How does it affect what I'm doing? How can I implement this if I need to implement it for whatever strategy, if it's a dose optimization strategy, etc. But how do I better, how can I use this in the clinical space? How does it improve my patient care? And that is a challenge. Hence, you know, with Pharmacometrics Africa, there's this large drive to kind of upskill people on the continent, and hopefully these skills or these people that's been upskilled are also in touch with clinical people, and therefore we relay that information, we teach them. And I think, you know, we just need to watch the space as people become more aware of modeling and what modeling can do in the clinical space. Then, you know, we could probably have more clinicians understanding modeling processes a bit more. But at this point, I am not sure there's a best way to describe it, and maybe Samir can share more. And I see Samir's also adding a lot. But I think if you have to speak to a clinician, you must speak to, like Safa said in the beginning, the effect size. What is the effect size I'm going to see with this? Samir?
Yeah, I would say that's like very relevant. Let us call it the problem is what is the meaning of our between subject variability? So many people say your software gave you a number 0.4, whatever it is. Some people would take a square root of it and tell, oh, my between subject variability is 30% or 40 or 50. But what does it really mean? So maybe you can say, if you have two drugs, say, okay, 50% have, oh, this drug has 50% and so 30 has a larger between subject variability. But as a clinician, it is not helpful. As a drug developer, unless you are a pharmacometrician, you don't really know what is the implication. So one of the way we report BSV is say, okay, clearance has BSV of 30%. For me, okay, clearance is a very important parameter. It determines my exposure, my AUC. So what I really want to know is, given my between subject variability, what is the impact on my clearance? An impact in terms of differences. So one way to do it is to compute, given my variability, where are 50% of my distribution of my patient or 90%? Say, if you do the computation, if you have a BSV of 30%, 50% of your patient will be between 0.8 and 1.3. So yeah, like half of your patient will be within 20%, give or less, from your central tendency. But yeah, I would say that's a large topic. I agree that just spitting out, that's a general comment, spitting out what the software gives you is not enough. It's not going to really explain what is the meaning of your model and how to apply it and how to use it. So many times you need to illustrate, whether it's a table or a graph, okay, what does it really mean? For example, that's why when we do covariate, say you did your covariate analysis, it is not useful to report, okay, the effect of, say, sex on clearance 0.89, I don't know what. What you really want to report, that's why we do forest plots. Okay, what's the impact on my AUC and Cmax? So we understand, okay, do we need to dose adjust? Do we need to increase or change the dose for a given subpopulation? So, and the newest FDA, say, guidance, and there was also a nice model MOEV paper on covariate effects recommending to provide now forest plots to illustrate the meaning and impact of your covariate. But I will send a link to what I'm not sure I can share my screen, but let me just load it here on my end first. So it's an important topic, I would say. So one of the vignettes of my Fox Export package. So at the end, that's what I'm talking about. So we have a model, we have a weight effect, albumin effect, sex effect. And also I'm showing the BSV. So that's simulated, of course, example. But the reason I'm showing my BSV is, do you see my screen? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So So here, for example, we clearly see that weight is the largest effect. So for a person with 128 kilo, we are really 0.66. So I have the ratio. So I am almost half in terms of exposure versus someone very light, 56 kilo. I have an increase of 50%, which is outside of the clinical equivalence limit. And we can immediately see albumin effect is very small. Male effect is small, 12% lower. But how does this compare to my BSV? Like, is the weight effect larger than unexplained variability? So here I illustrate on my reference, 50% randomly of my patient will be within 0.9 to 1.13. And 90% of my patient will be between 0.7 and 1.33. So that's showing that, yeah, weight effect is beyond the random between subset variability. So I really need to take it into account because it is generating exposure anywhere between half less to 50% more. So that's how I typically illustrate BSV in terms of impact and meaning on like AUC or Cmax.
That's really, really cool, Samir. I mean, we should just pop that link into the chat so that we can capture it as well for later. Francis, let's not take your question just yet. Let's take a break. We come back at a quarter past the hour. Samir, the one comment that I would add to your one is, of course, that's showing PK. I really dislike it when people call themselves, this is the PK department in a modeling group, because PK is meaningless without PD. So we assume then that even that big effect that you're showing, the big exposure effect, ultimately translates into a pharmacodynamic effect. Let's reconvene at quarter past.
Absolutely, yeah. We need also to research the impact on our PD or response. But yeah, let us take a break.
So we stop now, right? Vaishni, don't run away, eh? Or is your patient?
Yes, well, I got a call already, but we're still okay for now. So if I'm still around, I will come back. But just one point before we break away. So Francis, I would imagine that something like this can also be kind of discussed within the discussion section of your report, explaining it in more detail what you're seeing as well. Yeah. All right, so let's break for 10 minutes and we should be back.
5 minutes. It becomes 4 minutes now.
Okay. 4 minutes, 16:15. Discussions around the content. Noor, you can put up your quiz.
So, should I share my screen? Okay.
Yes. Oh, okay, there we go.
We have a column had made. So it's a part of the model quiz, actually. So the first question is the executive summary of population PK report describes all steps of the model development, includes procedures for handling of outliers, does not contain visual presentations or reflects the content of the report.
So Noor, maybe do you want everyone to discuss points around the questions after they've submitted their answers? How do you want to do this? Or do you want to go through the whole quiz and then start discussions?
I don't know if we have the answers after responding all the questions or one by one, Colin, technically.
I don't know. I think we can make this up as we go. You decide, or let between you, Vaishni, and Rohan decide how you want to handle it.
Yeah. Let's be nice to the gentleman. Rohan, do you want to decide how we do this?
So I wanted to ask now, do we have access to the poll answers? Like, do we or is it one by one? Because if it's one by one, then I think take it one by one, talk about it. But if we can see all the answers, then we can do them in sequence and then discuss.
Correct. Okay, great. So I'm sure in the background, either Colin, Noor, or Innocent is going to have the answers for us. So we can probably go through the entire poll and then pick out those questions that needs a bit more discussion.
So I give the answer, or you want to discuss it?
No, just go with the next question. Let's finish the poll and then we can have
Okay.
discussions. Yeah.
Okay, actually, it's Colin who is having the hand on. I don't know if I can do it.
So you should be seeing the results now of what the whole team chose. Can you see it like I can see it? So
Yes.
it's showing that
Yeah.
20% chose the first one, nobody chose the second one person chose the third one, and 7 people chose the last one. Right? You got
Yes.
that, right?
Yes.
And then up to the next one. I need to try and find the next one now. Sorry, give me a second there. Okay, there's the second one. The second one's coming up. You can read it, Noor.
I can't see.
Can you see it yet?
No. I have the first question. I always
Okay,
have
I can help you.
the
About
okay.
Yeah, about population PK reports, single choice. So it's not part of regulatory submissions. Key messages should be understood by pharmacometricians. The technical document is aimed at specialists only. That's probably enough time for everyone to answer.
I'm ending it. I'm sharing the results. Hopefully you can see the results.
91% says a technical document.
Yes. No, for some reason, it's not letting me launch the next one, which is a bit crazy. But maybe we can just go with those two.
Okay, so the first question had quite a variety of answers. So maybe one that chose the first, which was it includes all steps in the modeling development. Maybe just share your thoughts. And you're welcome to raise your hand or unmute and answer. Okay, so when I first, there we go. Awesome. All right, so the executive summary of a population PK report. So I see we've had a mixture largely between 1, which was describes all steps of the modeling development, and then 2, which is reflects the content of the report. So your thoughts, Noor, this is you can take over as well.
Actually,
see
the
it?
right answer is reflects the content of the report, but I think some of the other answers can be correct as well. So it's not very precise. Describe all steps of the model development. It's not as detailed as that, so we cannot describe all the steps. It's the modeling section actually, but yeah, but maybe some people thinks that it could be the right answer, but it's not very precise.
So maybe if I can jump in here, an executive summary is actually something you find in many other contexts as well, and it has a specific job, and a specific job is to highlight the most important bits of the entirety of the thing.
Yeah.
So you'll find it in other contexts as well, and that's why it reflects the content of the report is the most appropriate answer.
Yes.
And in terms of the visual presentations, here it says it does not contain visual presentations, but it actually does. And you can actually go back to the guidance documents, and it clearly says that you actually can add visuals within the executive summary as well. And then describes all steps of the modeling development. There's quite a few steps, and it wouldn't be a summary then. It would be quite an intense report. So yeah, to agree with Noor here as well, and Rohan.
The second one.
So Innocent says we can ask the audience and who wants to be a millionaire. So maybe the next time you ask the audience, we should ask who wants to be a millionaire, and then they're gonna answer.
Yeah.
Okay, go for it.
No. I was saying that, yeah, in who wants to be the millionaire, what the audience is usually right. So we can go with the most word selected to be right.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
Cassia?
most of us had read and seen the material, so it's a good point. We have good answers. So the second one, it's
Cassius had his hand up before
Yeah.
we go to the second one. Cassius?
Yeah.
Hi, Vishni. Thanks and for the presentation, and Ruhan as well, and No as well.
Hi, Cassius.
So regarding this or the previous question, so on the visual presentation, if you say summary, which specific visual presentation will one need to consider? Because when reporting, like there are a lot of like visual presentation reporting pharmacometrics, like which one will be the ideal one? I know if it's gonna be summary, you can include all the graphics. Like, will the VPC be the one to be considered or others? Yeah. Thanks.
So I would think within the executive summary, sorry, no, do you want to go first?
No, yeah, go.
So I would think within the executive summary, you're not really going to relay your plots, but more overview concepts. So for instance, if you want to give a visual presentation of the overall modeling steps or your process or your clinical decision, what type of modeling you would do, I would think it's more of an overview process as opposed to, for instance, goodness of fit plots. But open to others' thoughts on this.
Yes, I totally agree with you, Vanki. So
Yeah, just to answer the questions, I would say VPC is highly technical and not very useful in my opinion in the executive summary. But you want to show, I would say, show the data, show, say, response rates of your patient, and then and the messaging of it. How did you summarize? What did you find in the system? I'd say it's much more useful. So what data you collected, what does it mean? Than showing a highly technical goodness of fit type figure. It's a VDC or something like that.
Great. Innocent has a thought. He said, I'd compare technical summary with an abstract, and some journals now require graphical abstracts. That's very true. You sure you want to share more thoughts on that, Innocent?
No, so this was to follow up what you said earlier that yeah, in a summary can include what graphics. And I'm seeing more and more journals these days actually requiring what graphical abstracts. So I think yeah, adding visuals in your summaries, I think it's a good, but people understand what graphics, I think, more than just words alone. So if you can include what graphics in your technical summary, I think it's what. But of course, it depends on where you're at. If it depends on your audience. If traditionally there are no what graphics in summaries, unless you want to introduce this as a new thing, then you probably have to do tradition.
Yeah, agree with you. Okay, should we go to the next one? Colin, are you still okay with the third question? Are you able to pop it up?
Let me try.
Here we go. Yep, works.
Yeah, it's there. Good. I don't know whether I'm doing it or somebody else is doing it, but
I did it.
okay, good. I knew I was good, but I didn't know that I was that good, innocent.
Oh. You want to read through it, Noor?
Okay, so the results section of population PK report only presents the final model outcomes, should put the results from the current analysis in perspective with existing results, describe how well the final model describes the data, and includes the qualification of the model.
I think you can stop it now, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so we see that okay, this is a bit of a split. So 55% is the last one, which includes qualification of the model. And we've got a 27-18 split between the second and the third. And Noor, the answer is?
Actually, the answer is, I think, it's the last one. Let me Because
Yeah.
I remember that I did it wrong on my first attempt. Um, yes, it does include the qualification of the model, and yeah, we can get confused with the second and the third one. But if we read it precisely, so should put the results from the current analysis in a perspective with existing results, and describes how well the final model describes the data. It's more about the discussion section actually. So yeah, but we are talking about results and comparing them, and yeah, I understand why some of us have choose this answers, but actually it includes the qualification of the model. That's the right answer.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you, Nora. I actually think it's a very technical question. You need to read it really closely. And I think what the giveaway there is the word includes in the last one. Because it doesn't say it's only that. It says it includes the
Yeah.
qualification of the model. It's the art of writing single best answers. Any thoughts? And I think Innocent is correct here. The audience is always right. So 55% of the audience says the last
Yeah,
one.
we confirm that.
Any thoughts on this? Can we pop up the next question?
Okay, nice, Colin. So the appendices of PK report are not necessary, include the goodness of fit plots of the final model. Model file and result file are optional to add, allowed to add additional supportive plots.
Probably give 5 seconds and then pull up the results. All right, 89% says the last one, allowed to add additional supportive plots.
So now you know what is the right answer according to Innocent. So yes, it's like all appendices. It's the additional figures or plots. But the goodness of it, I think it's so important that we put in the principal report and the appendices for the additional plots.
I totally agree with you. Are there any thoughts around this? Comments? Anyone wants to challenge the answers or challenge the audience?
No, this is why democracies are best.
Right. Ready for the next one?
Yes.
Okay, maybe I can help read this one. The model development section of a population PK report is part of the discussion section. Is a summary of all tested models, or is a summary of all tested models should be provided, includes a brief description of the study. Details of the key modeling decisions should be provided. And that should be it for that question. Let me pop up the results. All right. And the audience says details of the key modeling decisions should be provided. That's 82%.
Okay,
And
and
we've
that's correct question, answer. And
the
then
correct
is
answer.
summary. Actually, if we remove the word summary, it's all tested models should be provided. It would be correct. But it's not a summary. We have to detail the modeling, all the modeling steps in this section, so it's not correct. Is part discussion section? No, it's a section. It's a model development section. It's a whole section of the report, so it's not part of another section. So,
And it generally comes before the discussion section. Okay, that was quite straightforward. Any comments here? Any thoughts? I'm still watching the chat space. Okay, if not, I think we've got 3 more questions to go through, right?
yeah.
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 Questions.
Great. Can we have the next question? Please, Innocent/Colin.
Innocent's doing a better job.
I think
It's just at some
we
point
can
it
do
made
it.
me go.
I have the hand. I'll try to. No, pulling. Okay. So, yeah, you can go with it.
Do you want me to? Okay. The introduction of a population PK report provides full development context, only focuses on the analysis itself, helps the reader to understand the context of the analysis, and includes prior knowledge of model structure and covariates. I almost said dialysis instead of analysis. Okay, and here we've got 90% saying helps the reader to understand the context of the analysis, and we're going with the audience.
Okay. Yeah, that's the correct question. The first one, full development. It may provide the context, but not all the full, but not the full development context. Sometimes some words are the incorrect words.
It's sometimes just a play on words.
Yeah. So we have almost the correct answer for everybody.
And question number 7.
So let's try to have 100% correct answers for the next ones.
Hey, question 7. The data section of a population PK report should give an overview of the available data, explain the reasons for data exclusion, help the reader to follow the steps from the original data set to the analysis data set, or all of them. Okay. Do you think we have 100% on this question? Oh.
Yes, we can consider it as all of them are correct. So it's not wrong to put explain the reasons for data exclusion or help the reader to follow the steps from the original dataset to the analysis dataset, and also give an overview of the available data. So all of them are correct. So we have 100%.
Great. Okay. So we're hitting a home run with the last question.
Yeah.
All right. Question 8. The discussion section of a population PK report should put the results of the model in the context of the clinical development, make dosing recommendations based on the covariate effect, only discuss the analysis, not mention the limitations of a model.
Feels like there are a couple again
Oh.
that could be right.
So we're expecting a split again.
It was
Wow,
100% till someone at the last minute.
Okay, so we almost at 100%.
Yeah.
So close. Okay, 92%. And we would think the audience is correct. The audience has been correct for the entire afternoon.
Yes.
Right? Yes. You want to share some other thoughts around this, Noah?
Yes, that's the correct answer that puts the results of the model in the context of the clinical development. But also the second one, I understand why we can maybe we can talk about dosing recommendation, but not only based on the covariate effect. So this is the wrong part of the answer, maybe.
So I think for multi choice questions, sometimes it's about choosing the most correct answer.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes you'll have an answer which is a bit correct, but if there's a more correct answer, then just go for the most correct answer, unless you're allowed to choose multiple options.
Yeah. But does it mean that it's not correct? But
Yeah, because someone can argue that you can make recommendations, and in fact, most reports they wonder what are those are your results. What do you recommend?
yeah.
Yeah.
So maybe
And it's
it's
also
100.
the terminology as they're kind of moving away from multiple choice questions now to single best answers, because all of them could be right, but which is the most correct? Yeah.
Yes.
So you would go for the most correct, like Innocent said. All right, we've got 2 hands. Mwila?
Okay, yes, I just wanted to add on the second one that they make dosing recommendation based on the covariate effect. I think the second one is absorbed in the first one. When you just say put the results of the model in the context of the clinical development, you would have also made those recommendations if necessary by just doing that. So I think the second one is absorbed in the first.
Yes.
Absolutely. Agree with you totally. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was you, the second one? Moila?
No. Actually, I almost chose the second one, but I don't know how my hand landed on the first one.
Okay.
Oh.
I consider that all of us, it's 100% correct for me.
So if you want to practice a bit more and go back to the quiz, it's readily available on the platform. So it's always nice to go back to things after you've consolidated and reflected on the knowledge. So that was the end of the quiz. Do we have any questions? Any questions or just your thoughts? Your thoughts around reporting, your thoughts around the quiz, your thoughts around the session. What more would you have liked? What did you learn most? What did you think was helpful? What was not? Okay, so I can't see who was first or second, but I'm going to go in order of my screen. Safa and then Francis.
Thanks for the poll and for having the quiz, doing it together. That was really fun, actually. It's very nice. So I have just a question from your experience, you and Rohan, and others as well. So when did you practically started putting like the writing the report? I know that once you have the analysis plan, you can start, but I mean like practically, like in your case, like in your project, when did you start doing that? When did you start like putting these together, and what's your recommendation?
Mm-hmm. Okay, Aaron, I'm not sure if you want to go first and then I go. Heard a lot from me. Maybe you
Sure.
can go first with this. Yeah.
Okay, so for the app, we started actually earlier, but that was because we had to get ready for page. But if I am going to give you an honest feedback from previous projects, for me, that were not necessarily pharmacometrics orientated, I started too late. I always start too late. So I've made it a goal as part of my professional development to start as early as possible.
Yeah, and I think from our end, we spent a considerable amount of time putting the data analysis plan together because we knew that this is what we were going to use subsequently, and we needed to make sure we had all those basic information down. And as we went along, what we were doing is just creating kind of putting everything in order, but writing the whole report in terms of, so the way we wrote the report was actually in the manuscript. Like Rohan, we aimed for page. So our report, and I remember very explicitly during our face-to-face session, one of it was actually doing the poster presentation. So there was that day that was set aside where we put the poster together, and that's where we sat down and just collated all of this and had the first draft of the poster. So when it came to the page call, we didn't really spend too much of time on the poster because we already had done it before. And so by the end of the APT program, we had a draft poster for page at least. We were still in discussions as to how the manuscript was going to be written because this was all part of the another PhD work as well. So that concept of we're going to lead the manuscript came about a month after the APT program itself, and that's when we started writing the manuscript. But the fact that we had the data analysis, we had already started reporting, and how we would give feedback to the sponsor is that after the entire week, we would put all our key findings into a PowerPoint presentation that we would present on a weekly meeting to our sponsor. So that PowerPoint presentation actually we started compiling our report from there. So when we needed those graphs, we just went back to the PowerPoint presentations and pulled it out from there. So then that's how we started. So I would say that the moment we started the data analysis, that was our report starting. And throughout it, we were just building on that by creating those PowerPoint presentations to show to the sponsor. So the earliest stuff, the better. I think if you can even start now with methodology sections, because by now you've already kind of had a data analysis plan in place. So I think the earlier the better, and no time like the present. Francis?
Yes, so thank you, Vaishnavi. Just confirm that.
Sorry, Francis, I didn't get that.
No, can you just confirm that?
Okay, you're breaking up a bit, so maybe you can put it in the chat, but I got the sense that we answered your question. Okay. Any more questions? Thoughts? We've got 7 minutes on the clock, and like Colin likes to say, we can give ourselves a few minutes back. But I think let's make use of the 7 minutes that's left. So if there's any other questions or thoughts.
Yeah,
Colin?
let's also do some housekeeping. Thanks, Vaishni. Thanks, Noor. Thanks, Rohan. I think this was awesome, and there was like quite a lot of feedback to say that the interactive part right at the end was nice. Ronald, you up next, the week after next, and you'll actually be working with Kenta Yoshida. He is the supervisor for Susan and Sadiq. And the topic will be building on population PK model applications and simulations. So Ronald, it's been getting better and better over the time. So no pressure on you to make a really, really good session and beat Noor and Francis in terms of, and the previous people on the sessions. The other thing is our next week's session is on your report again. The modeling plan is going to be critical. You already saw Vaishni and Rohan really, really drum that in. That, you know, in particular Vaishni, where she showed you that there were big sections from the modeling plan that can just simply go into your report. So I see several modeling plans still not on the platform. So by next week, they should be up there so we can look at it. Remember also that we need to see that you should post your presentation by the day before, at least by midday, in order that the faculty can look at your presentation and give you detailed feedback, give you concrete feedback, give you feedback on the slides themselves, on the graphics that you're using, etc. And it'll help us decide which ones we want to look at. That's it, I think, from my side. If there's any questions, Samir, is there anything else you wanna add? I see you posting some nice comments there about lab notebooks and stuff like that.
Yeah, it is really a general advice. Don't wait too long before documenting what you are doing. Take notes, document. Eventually, you decide what goes into the report. And like there are several papers and presentation by Joga Gubungu, former director for metrics at FDA, where he really emphasized the importance of communication. Like, and think about the value of communication. And I've seen many junior scientists really doing all the effort on the modeling and very minimal effort on the communication and giving the value of what they did. So think about it and tell me what would be a good percentage of splitting the effort. How much percent of the project, the total analysis project, would be to communicate and report what you did? Is it 5%, 10%? Think about it. What makes sense in your context? I can tell you, it's not 10%. It's not 20%. It is more because everything you did in your modeling won't be known or communicated if you don't invest. Say, for example, every detail is important, every figure, every table. That's why how many times I've seen people don't just copy paste and grow output from software. Oh, I don't have time to fine tune my plot. Well, you don't want to take the time. It's important that you make it readable by non-technical people that never uses such software. So, yeah, so general advice that you should not ignore the importance of clear communication of your results.
Very cool. Any other questions from the fellows? Otherwise, we'll give you 2 minutes back.
Yeah, and I just want to thank Veshni and Mohan for their presence today. Really happy to hear their voices and see them with us, and looking forward to future inputs from alumni and fellows. Thanks a lot for joining us.
It was a pleasure, Samir. We had loads of fun putting this together and reflecting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Rohan.
And I'm sorry I can't join you at Page, but Vaishni will represent.
Okay. Take care.
Very good. Take care. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.